Just really want to bring everybody up to date on who thinQ is, what we do, and kind of get a good overview of what our solution looks like. So I'm going to take the first 10 minutes or so and walk you guys through just some slides that describe what we do. And then Matt's going to go in depth and actually open up the tools and actually show you what they look like underneath, which I think will be the more exciting part of things. So let me go ahead through my part. We can get to the fun stuff with Matt. So first of all, Matt and I have been doing a series of webinars called The New Normal, and this is what I think most people's households look like today. What's interesting is here's a mom, doing telemedicine. We've got, her daughter is doing, some distance learning from home, and I'm sure the son over there is probably playing a game or something, trying to stay out of trouble. But what's interesting about what's happening now, obviously it's sad that we have to deal with this coronavirus outbreak, but it's really shown the spotlight on the fact that cloud communications, voice and messaging in particular, are both playing a bigger role in our lives now, even than they did 40, 50 days ago or so, when most of us, were sent home into quarantine. So it's a really good time to get reacquainted with thinQ and to see how we can provide services and solutions during this time, during the time of COVID and this outbreak, to really power solutions like these. And in fact, we're doing a webinar on Thursday. You'll all get, when you get the recording here later today, we'll include a link to register. But Matt and I are going to talk on Thursday even more in depth about our SMS MMS text messaging solution that's part of thinQ. And, obviously that's become an increasing part of the communication flow as well. So if we had to sum up exactly what thinQ does, this is a reminder, we really do deliver flexible, very cost-effective voice and text messaging solutions in the cloud. We've been around just over 10 years, have about 1,200 partners across at least 14 different industries at my last check. And that's really, the niche that we play in this universe. We're not a carrier per se, but we do unlock access to more than 40 carriers through our APIs and our platform. And what we're really excited about is the way that we've created our least cost routing engine on the voice side, that most of our partners save anywhere from 35 to 70% on their cost of goods on the voice side of the house. So we're going to obviously go more in depth into that in just a minute, but what's exciting is, not just the flexibility, but also the savings that come with thinQ. It's important things to think about, especially now, again, as we're dealing with the COVID situation, that savings and making sure that your cost of goods sold are as low as they can possibly be is an important business consideration. And last but not least, we don't talk about them enough, but we have a great support team, 5-star support team. It's one of the big reasons why so many of our partners have stayed with us for so many years, is they know they can pick up a phone, send an email, open a support ticket, get an instant response, and get their issues dealt with in a very expedient way. And that's what great service and support is all about. So just a couple examples of what people are using our tools for, which I think are very helpful. Here's a great example from a healthcare provider. And in this case, we've got this is kind of a more rural, very spread out health system called Lower Umpqua Hospital District. And Mark and his team put together a package, new phones, obviously new internet connectivity to plug into thinQ, that actually was able to help this hospital group save quite a bit. In fact, 50% on what they're paying for their telephony services by putting in a new phone system. They got rid of some of their hardware that was installed and went to the cloud. So they're very excited to have SIP trunking and thinQ and a voice service that is helping them take those very significant cost savings and put it towards patient care. So that's a hospital example. Next is our friend Richard Nolan over at TrackDrive. We have a lot of customers that do call tracking and we call it marketing automation, where, in this case, Richard was working with Twilio, very well-known system that allows you to set up your own, sort of custom interface for both voice and messaging. And Richard really needed to scale up his outbound call tracking product that was powered by Twilio. And in about 60 seconds, he was able to add a single line of code to his Twilio interface, start routing those calls for his call tracking solution through thinQ. And I was able to save many thousands of dollars because he could get more calls per second and he could route them more efficiently through thinQ, again, with a very easy interface where none of the other code had to be changed, just a single line to have all those calls start to be processed through thinQ. A very significant cost savings over what he was spending with Twilio right out of the box. Another example here is Morrisville. This is a paper company based right here in North Carolina. thinQ is here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And James Cass was actually working with us. It was interesting. He was in charge of a very high volume call center down in Florida, I believe, a number of years ago, and used our solution for least cost routing to make sure that he could deliver millions of calls every week through thinQ, and again, save on his cost of goods. He was saving almost 70%, if I recall correctly, when we last spoke. When he moved on to take over as the head of IT at Morissette Paper Company, they did the same thing. They switched all their telephony over to us, and again, we're able to save over 40% and get the flexibility that Matt is going to show you in a couple of minutes in terms of being able to turn carriers on and off. If he had an issue, he had full control. All that comes baked in with thinQ. So just some quick examples here. This is something we can do for you. If you can provide us with a 30-day snapshot of your call detail record information, we can actually spit this back to you and say, if you had run those exact calls, the to and the froms, across thinQ, how much money would you have saved? And in this case, this is one of the top US travel contact centers. We can't use their name, but they did over 3.6 million minutes, and they would have saved it was close to 72%, which we did kind of blot it out there on the left. But you can see here that the average rate actually can get even smaller than 0.007. In fact, a lot of our customers are 0.003, 0.004 of the average rate. So again, this is a piece of data you can provide us with the CDR. We can actually run this for you and spit this back, and you can actually see in the last 30 days what we would have saved. Same thing here for an international VoIP provider. Obviously a little bit more expensive because international is, certainly more expensive, but we could actually deliver this rate for this international VoIP provider. We can actually split it out by country. And again, this is a piece of data that we can provide to you to see whether our system would save you money. And last, and I know, Matt, you're very excited about this. I know I am too. We have a lot of customers that use tools like Twilio, Plivo, Nexmo, a whole bunch of those types of companies that have a voice, set of carriers that are part of that solution, where if you're just doing not too much voice volume, for instance, across Twilio, it's not going to be a big part of your costs. But in this case, when this customer was ramping very quickly, and in fact, a lot of the telemedicine, a lot of the different solutions that are being used nowadays with the COVID situation, they're really finding that Twilio costs are going through the roof because their volumes are increasing tremendously. And here was a great example of we got Twilio data from one of our customers, and if they had run those same calls through us, they would have saved 83%. And again, you can see here they would have spent $5,000 instead of $15,000 on their Twilio bill for the voice side of things. So I think it's pretty exciting to see real-world examples of how people are putting us to use and the kinds of opportunities they're realizing and the savings that they're realizing. So I think the best way to start here is with the fact that thinQ really is a CPaaS platform, a communication platform as a service, where meeting the requirements of those independent carriers, VoIP providers, enterprise folks, just like I mentioned to you, Twilio users, where we're really able to, through the power of SIP trunking and APIs, very easily turn on outbound LCR, inbound LCR calling, handle your origination. We can actually source phone numbers for you, put those to work. But also now, something we've been doing now for almost 2 years is also SMS and MMS text messaging. All of this powered through our APIs and our cloud platform, our CPaaS platform. And in fact, we were really excited. Last year, we actually appeared for the first time. It was also Forrester's first time doing a report of the CPaaS provider report that they put together last year. They ranked us in the upper 25% of all providers, that included Twilio and all those other big guys that and listed us as a strong performer. So we're very excited about that. Again, we have customers who are both carriers, CLECs, ILECs, regional phone carriers, those kinds of folks, but more and more enterprise type companies, right? And also folks who need our tools for apps. And you can see kind of the whole circle here as well. And again, delivering carrier grade service that's enterprise centric, that scales very easily, scales very well with what you need at the lowest possible cost with really good support. So it's kind of everything that everybody wants in a provider like us. And let's just talk for a minute about our cloud voice solution. So what's great about it is, and you can read a lot of these testimonials right on our website, where one of the main reasons that people love us is not only that they can unlock these 40 carriers, but that they can fully customize their call routing. right? They can actually go in any hour of the day or night without filing a ticket. They can turn carriers on and off. They can set up new trunks. And, if they can, and they can also go in and Matt's going to show you the tool. You can actually go down to the call level and say, hey, this call didn't sound right. We're getting calls at this area code that don't sound right now. They're not, something's happening. You can actually do that research on your own, get a SIP ladder, actually see where the issue is, and then you can go in and turn things on and off. You can turn a carrier on and off either for the week, for the month, permanently. It's really up to you. So it's all about customizing the routes. It's also accurately routing those calls per your specifications to get the best possible price and giving you access transparently to the data to get the data the way that you want it to be. It's very easy to install, 40 carriers to choose from, and a much higher call completion rate than you're used to. It all adds up in our cloud solutions. And again, just a quick snapshot. We do offer international least cost routing as well as, again, primarily North American termination. 40 carriers, but we do serve over 170 countries. And these are all the logos that you're used to seeing. We only put high quality, even though they're low cost, because we're looking down at the route level, we can get the best price per route, but only the highest quality carriers. And it's a very high bar to get a new carrier onto our network. It takes many months. We do lots of testing and lots of different ways to make sure that the calls are completed at a higher than average percentage, and also that they're high quality. And again, we are a RespOrg, and we do offer a least cost routing solution. Our LCR is actually part of other people's LCRs, right? Depending on the types of routes and prices that we can provide. But a lot of people rely on us as their least cost routing solution. What that means is you plug it in, you turn on 10, 20, 40 carriers, and then our solution is actually going to use sort of a flavor of artificial intelligence to actually pick up the call and determine where it's going to go to get the best possible price, what route that is. Then it will actually complete that call, and then you'll get billed again at that best possible price. And what's great is, again, you have full control over this LCR. You turn carriers on and off. You can make routing changes in real time if you have any sort of issues. You can also determine geographical limitations and blocks. You can even do follow the sun routing. If you have multiple call centers around the world, you can actually have those numbers actually pick up and that traffic move over different hours of the day as different call centers kind of roll on and roll off. That's all built into our tool. And again, Matt's going to talk about this in just a minute, but we have really strong APIs that allow you, if you're a developer, to use what you already love. We know you love Twilio, Plivo, Nexmo, even Signalwire, our newest addition. For interconnects, right? And if those are the tools that you use to create an IVR or any sort of a telecom solution, with one very small change to your code that will not impact anything else that you've done, you're able to add thinQ and our least cost routing platform and all the different technology that we bring to the table by just changing one line of code. And you can see here on the left, Twilio users in particular, Plivo, Nexmo, saving a ton of money by adding that line of code, signing up with thinQ, and just routing their calls away from the one or two standard carriers that Twilio, Plivo, and Nexmo provide, and put it across thinQ, and you can see their prices go down. In many cases, at least 50%, sometimes all the way up to 70%. One of the big reasons why people get that level of savings from us is that when a call is finished, Twilio, all these guys will round their calls to the next minute. We actually have 6-second rounding, so you can do the math on that. That provides a ton of savings for you. And also, a better rate also, of course, on toll-free calling. So again, it's easy to use our APIs to plug into our cloud voice and messaging solutions and do with it what you want and see those tremendous savings and get those new capabilities that you love. And if we look here at the SMS solution, again, this is something we've been doing, I think it's been just about 2 years, where you can exchange text with a single API. It's very, very easy integration. It's a standard set of API calls that you can use to embed into your system. You can do some testing, and we allow you to deliver more text, more text per second, and really get the throughput that the enterprise level type solutions are looking for. And again, get those detailed analytics and tracking usage data that you need that in many cases from other providers are kind of hidden. And in fact, Matt, if you could kind of walk us through, this is actually, our set of our API documentation for SMS, MMS, and it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, first off, can you still see me and hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My internet at home is for some reason cutting in and out, so I had to switch over to my phone. But that's the world, the new normal, right? We're just kind of have to adapt and change. Yeah, so our API. So the way that our system works from our API perspective is basically anything that would be within our origination portal. So as far as inbound voice, as well as for our SMS capabilities, all of those are going to be utilized through our API. And as you can see on the screenshot here, this is actually for sending messages. You can see over on the left-hand side, as far as all of the various options that we have for SMS, such as MMS, as far as configurations and setting up, inbound locations for inbound traffic. There's a whole bunch of things you can choose through. But as you can tell from that middle example in the very center there, it's very, very straightforward, very easy API to follow. Very simple, from number to number, sending message content. It's super simple, and it's very easy to implement. We've got a couple customers, people like CureMD, who is obviously seeing a big increase in traffic right now. There's a company called Deliver Logic, who is a food delivery service, or they're providing SMS services for food deliveries. We also have both of those companies, especially now, are seeing big booms. And then we also have companies like the Call Pro, who is doing both voice and SMS, so they're utilizing all functions and features. They've kind of had great success with, as far as setting everything up, and very easy to implement and easy to run with.
That's right. And I think one of the things that people really love about our SMS MMS solution is, again, getting that higher throughput, right? Being able to send more messages per second. And obviously there are limits to the number that you can send, but a lot of our customers are they're very bursty. Like we have school notification companies, just notification companies that schedule these sends. And sometimes those require, sort of more messages per second than they would normally need. And of course it's queued and it eventually gets out. But one of the things they love is being able to send those messages, obviously as many as they can per second when these things actually occur.
Right.
So Matt, if you could, I'd love for you, this is when we can switch over, and, I'd love to show everybody, again, those 40 carriers. How do you set up those, those routing profiles, and, give everybody a quick taste of, what it looks like under the hood.
So here is our outbound portal. So what you're essentially doing, this is for everything as far as outbound traffic goes. The first thing you would want to do is create what we're calling a profile. Now think of this as basically your directions or your roadmap as far as how you would like your outbound traffic to work. How would you like it to go? In this particular case example, we'll say a mixed, so that way you'll have both North American as well as international. And here is where you will be able to see all of the carriers that are within our solution. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that way you can kind of get a better understanding or a better scope from all of these carriers. Now, this is just on the North American plan itself, and we have them categorized via RBOX, high volume, large CLEX, specialty ones, Canadian ones. You can see here that we have a vast, array as far as carriers that you would be able to have all of your traffic go across. Now, the way that we like to explain this is, for an example, let's say you're trying to make a call, or let's say your current implementation is just with one carrier, right? We'll say AT&T, for example. So right now we're simulating essentially your network, right? So you have one carrier that you're making all of your outbound calls through, and whatever rates you're getting from them, that's just the rates you're getting, no matter where you're trying to reach, right? Let's just say you're trying to reach Lower Manhattan, which is predominantly run by Verizon. They own the copper wire there. They're the ones who are the kind of the main people out there. So in your situation, you would have your call go outbound. It would go through AT&T, which would then need to hop across to a Verizon network as far as trying to utilize those copper wires. Verizon's obviously going to charge a fee to AT&T for using their wires, for using their copper lines. And so therefore you end up getting, some kind of charge of that placed back on you. Well, what if we were able to essentially just have that call go directly to Verizon instead? Rather than be forced to being on AT&T, if you're trying to get to a location that is predominantly run through Verizon, why not run through Verizon directly? So when we enable Verizon, now we actually have that decision logic. We have the ability for our system to decide who is going to be the best carrier for that traffic to go across. Now, we decide based off of least cost routing, but we also do a smart routing, deciding who is going to be the best person or the best carrier to make sure that that call is going to get connected. Now, the question may become is, why don't we just turn on all of them? So that way I have the best possible chance. The answer is that's usually what happens. Most of our customers, typically, they just enable everything. They enable all of the carriers so that way they can then have our system decide who's going to be the best way to go. Now, you can actually have some control over that, such as, just saying the full LCR, meaning anything that comes through, all of the carriers that you have enabled, we're going to try and complete that call starting with the lowest rate. We will complete that call regardless of how many carriers it needs to jump through, and regardless of the cost, we're going to complete that call. Meaning if the first carrier fails, we'll switch over to the next one and then switch over to the next one until that call finally completes. We also have some options as far as some fraud mitigation tools to create a cap as far as how much the max rate for those calls that you're willing to accept. Some of those Caribbean islands, those calls can be quite expensive. There's a lot of fraud related to those. So you actually can put in some cap rates in there so that way you can try and mitigate those calls entirely. So once you've set those up, you'll essentially just create a trunk that your system would actually be directly connected to. So if you have a PBX or AdTran or whatever you're using in your environment, you could just put in the IP address here. You'd select the profile that you've created, and then once you hit save, everything is set up completely ready to go. You send your traffic to this particular location, this DNS address. We've already essentially whitelisted it because you've said here's the IP address of that unit. Now your traffic is able to start running. There's no delay, no nothing. Now, let's say you're using one of the connections, right? So one of the third parties, the Twilios of the world, right? We have an option for that as well, as Tim had mentioned. So you just select to connect. You pick the one that's set up for your environment, whether it's Signalwire or Twilio or Plivo, whatever it is. You hit save, and you're given some credentials. You're given an account ID and an account token. Those are unique identifiers to your specific trunk. And when you go back into your environment, whether it be Twilio or wherever, you make one line of code change in that system to include some of the credentials that you'd be given within this trunk, and all of your calls will end up routing directly to us instead of going through their network. And we're able to provide all of those other solutions that I showed you regarding the profiles, as far as all the carriers, being able to have all of that redundancy and be the better quality, because we'll go directly to the carriers that are predominant in those regions. We also talked a little bit about diagnostics. So we have the ability to, actually research the calls or being able to analyze the calls from the sake of, when you come through, you can see who, what calls have come through. And we also provide the specific SIP ladders for those calls. So that way you can see from start to finish what networks your calls went across, what carriers declined the calls, if any, which ones accepted the calls, how many switches, how many hops, what communication went back and forth, if there was any delay or post-dial delay, or if someone hung up on the call but you're not sure if you hung up or if they hung up. You can actually come in here and you can truly see who hung up the call. You can see all of that information directly from here that you may not be getting from other solutions. What's nice about that, in addition to be able to kind of analyze these calls, is you can do what's called a route block. Now, if you're using any of these other solutions, or if you're using a carrier directly, typically what you'll have to do is you'll have to reach out to those companies directly to say, hey, we're having an issue. They'll do some investigation, and then they'll create a route change or a route block on your behalf. The problem with that is that you're not really told what carrier was the problem, who they moved your calls over to, as far as what other carrier or what solution they did to fix the problem. You don't have any idea as far as when that previous carrier that they blocked is going to get reintroduced. You don't know how long it's going to last. You don't have any information, and you're at the mercy of them, their support team, as far as when they're going to implement this to begin with, right? You have no control over any of those things. With this solution, you actually do. You have all of the control. What could have taken previously a couple hours within another support team, you could actually have resolved in probably 15 minutes or less. So what you do is you basically just run a search for either the NPA, NXX, or the call area that you're having an issue with, or a specific state, whatever you'd like. In this particular case, I'll just say an NPA. So I'll say a 919. Maybe calls were failing to there. You select that route block. And then when you were running the diagnostics, you'll see what carrier those calls had gone across. Let's say CenturyLink was having an issue with those calls. Just go ahead and hit block on CenturyLink, set the permanent, set the expiration, we can say permanent for now, and then just hit save. The second you hit save, CenturyLink is taken out of this profile. So that way calls cannot go across CenturyLink. But here's the interesting piece about that. This is actually a surgical removal tool. So this route block, when we've specified a specific NPA, meaning a specific area code, when I create that route block, CenturyLink is only going to be blocked for that specific area code or whatever parameters you've set, whether it's state, rate center, whatever. That means that CenturyLink will still be available to all of the other locations, all of the other area codes, all of the other options. It's just for this one specific location that they've been taken out of. And that gives you a true power as far as control, and much more than what you'd be getting with any of the other people, the other carriers or solutions, because you're able to then still have those carriers in all of the other locations. SMS is going to work very similar. Unfortunately, I'm having an issue as far as trying to get it on my dashboard up and running with my internet right now. But as we talked about earlier with the API solution, it's, our dashboard is set up to, help with the configurations, but everything within that dashboard is API accessible as well. So I know we have a lot of customers, some of those ones that I had mentioned, that are utilizing our API to its fullest extent, as far as, setting up the SMS routes, as far as setting up the delivery confirmation URLs, as far as the inbound messages. All of those are being done via their API, and it's been a great solution so far. Yeah, that's just a screenshot there of what our inbound solution looked like.
Right. Hey, Matt, thanks. I know we're getting up, we're getting close here to the end. Yes, John, the answer is absolutely. Everybody who registered for the webinar, I'm going to be sending out a copy of the webinar as a video. We'll get that by the end of the day. I appreciate you sitting in now, and obviously we'll send that out. Lewis had a question too, Matt. One of the questions is, how do you protect us from fraud? How do you alert me? How does that work? I think I may have lost Matt. I tell you what, we actually did a webinar about fraud protection, which I'll include actually a link in as a sublink to the recording of this webinar. There's actually a few ways that we handle fraud protection. One of the ways is you can actually turn international off. Okay, first of all, that's one way to do it, because primarily that's where a majority of our fraud comes from. But you can also set, again, as we saw earlier that Matt showed you, you can actually set the maximum rate that you're willing to pay for any call right in the interface. So if somebody tries to divert your calls and it's, 80 cents, $1, $1.50 a minute, those kinds of calls, those will actually be filtered right out. And there's some other things that we can do, and alerting, yes, is one of the ways that people do it. You can actually set sort of a spend limit, and we actually have tools internally that will show your average daily spend. And if suddenly something starts to move in the wrong direction, literally almost in real time, all of our technicians are actually alerted. In fact, I see those alerts that go off a couple times a day, and they're already researching what's going on in terms of that increase in spend before you even know that there's an issue, and putting those blocks in place, because obviously there are places we know that fraudulent traffic goes much more often. I see South Dakota a lot. I see a lot of those Caribbean islands, those kinds of things. So we're pretty aware of what those are, and we do our best to not only block those, but also watch everybody's accounts and then alert you in real time. So in a lot of cases, you'll hear from us before you even know that there's an issue. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do it. There's a lot of different settings that we can set. Obviously, if nothing is 100%, there's no silver bullet. Sometimes a little bit of fraud may sneak in, but again, it doesn't affect the majority of our customers. It only affects some of them some of the time, and we have those things in place. Another question here is, how do I activate SMS on my portal? That's a great question. So one of the things you can do is, outreach to your account manager at thinQ, and we can kind of walk through what you want to accomplish with the tool. We can get that set up on our side. There's a couple little hoops we need to jump through on our side to get you enabled for SMS and MMS. And then, we can get you rolling. And again, Matt will be the one who will be working with you one-on-one, to make sure that you can get that up and running and get that integrated properly and tested. And he's great at that, along with our entire team. And we can make sure that you can get what you need. So with that, I do see that we're right up against our time. I want to say a really big thank you for everybody tuning in. And again, I mentioned earlier, I'll be sending a link to the recording of this webinar. We do hold this webinar every month on the fourth Tuesday of the month. So you can certainly chime in. You'll see some invitations for those as well going forward. If you have any questions, if you just want to talk to somebody, you want direct access to one of us, we'll be here to answer those questions. But in the meantime, right up against the time, again, appreciate all of your time and your interest in thinQ. And again, the best way to get some more information, if you want to have another demo with somebody, even with Matt directly, along with one of our solution experts, just go over to thinQ.com click on the Get a Demo link in the upper right-hand corner, and we'll set one up.